At the beginning of each podcast episode, hosts will typically read an ad for another company, but we're going to take this opportunity to promote and plug what we're building. We are building an AI powered app that's going to be your personal mindset coach. Think about it as if you had a therapist in your pocket, one that'll help you get to know who you really are, process your emotions, and make sense of your thoughts. The app launch waitlist is back live and it's on our website. For convenience, we also left a link in the show notes. It's very simple. All you got to do is put your name and email address and you're signed up for the waitlist. So you'll be the first to know when we launch. And also, you'll be the first to be able to actually test it. For now, here's a clip from this week's episode.
I knew at that point, it was like, okay, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be scared, but you're going to do it anyways, because if you don't do it the first time, the second time is not going to happen. If you don't do it the second time, the third time is not going to happen. And that's kind of like how I don't know, I guess that's my motto in life. Just do it anyways, right? Like.
So the word authenticity, right? It's a buzzword. You probably hear it all the time. But when you hear the word, like, what does it mean to you?
The word authenticity to me means living by a set of values, really getting to a place of like finding yourself and living by those core values that you have set for yourself, and trying your best to not stray from that. I think sometimes we get into situations where we're really tested with that question of who we are, right, and who we want to be in that situation. So that's what I think authenticity means to me.
So when you are your most authentic self, like, how would people describe you?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends on the scenario, on the situation, but I think more importantly is it's about asking yourself, are you true to yourself in that moment, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, let's maybe come up with an example or something.
Yeah, but like,
situation.
like people are like, yo, bro, él es un sinvergüenza, él es serio, él es cómico, like what? How do people describe you?
Okay, so like, yeah, my personality, I'm pretty silly. I'm a pretty silly person.
Okay.
When I get comfortable, like, I'm joking a lot, right? Like, but at first, I guess my personality is a more like reserved.
Okay.
So it's hot and cold in that area, but definitely when I get comfortable with somebody or in any situation, like, I get comical. I definitely do.
Okay.
So yeah, to say.
I feel like who we are, like, it starts off, like, I feel like our most authentic self is so impacted by how we grew up and our family, because they have certain expectations of who we should be,
Right.
who they want us to be, right? So you growing up, like, what do you think were some of those expectations on, like, from your family on who you should be?
Just like traditional Dominican cultural expectations, right? Como que, especially with growing out my hair, it was like, eso no es decente, like, te voy a cortar el pelo, o sea, como que tuck in your shirt, como que like very like traditional expectations, which I have found value in in my adult life. It is important, how you show up and represent yourself. But at the end of the day, you have to find who you are and what is that balance, especially, being raised with a culture, o sea, like in this country, but with like other cultural norms, right? So it's been a balance to find like, okay, how can I stay true to myself? At the end of the day, I've realized like I'm two things, right? Like, like there was a lot of things like growing up that just like didn't make sense. Like,
Like what?
O sea, with like, the cultural upbringing of like, Dominican parents, but then going to school and like, in white America, right? Like, there's just like, things that didn't, but in your adult life, you make sense of all of that.
So you were born here, or you immigrated here?
I was born here.
Okay. But what were some of those things where you just like, that you would just like confuse you, like, wait, but this is what I do at home, this is what I do at school, like it just feels like a conflict?
I'd have to think of an example. I mean, even in the way like we dressed, like like the early 2000s. I mean, I was a 90s baby, so early 2000s, with the baggy wear and like the hip hop culture and like the uptowns and all this. It was going shopping with my mom. It was like, oh, I want this, and it's like, no muchacha, está loco, tú no te puedes poner eso. And it's just like, yo, you trying to fit in, but then like you being raised with like other cultural norms where it's like your mom wants you to be that church boy on Sundays con el caco pelado y la camisa tucked in and you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
So there was like but again I think in my adult life I found value in that traditional upbringing.
Yeah. That's so funny. So like appearance was a big thing growing up.
Oh, for sure. There's just like a lot of judgment,
For sure. Yeah.
But you learn to get past that.
And you were really into the church, or like your family was growing up? So like were you like an altar boy? Like how involved were you? Really?
Hell yeah.
Nah.
Represent.
Yeah. Wait, tell me about it. Like you went every Sunday?
Yep. They call my mom Mother Teresa.
No way.
Como que joking, Ivan.
Yeah.
But yeah,
like everybody knows her in the church.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
and were you part of the choir as well?
Part of the choir. I mean, that's where I learned how to sing, to be honest.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Is that where you started getting the passion for it?
Maybe not the passion, but it was just like being around that. And my mom always involved us in like, the activities of the church, youth group, whatever, altar boy, whatever. And then when it came to like choir, it was like, oh, this is an activity that I kind of like, and then you're around the congas or what. And I would look at the musician and it's like, oh, I kind of, and it's church. It's like, they let you like, whatever, jam around and stuff. So that's kind of like where the musical influence kind of started as a young kid.
But even at that age, like, did you see potential for like that being a career, or were you just like, this is something I'm gonna just do on Sundays?
No, not necessarily. It was just, you're there, and that was like the fun part of church, right? Like,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you're trying to get through the mass here.
That's my mom's favorite part of church. Like she really likes the music, and it's interesting because like I went to Catholic school my whole life, like middle school, even high school. And it wasn't until college where like I was like, yeah, that's it. But to this day, like my mom and Abuela are like still very involved in the church, and they go like every Sunday. And like during COVID, even when that wasn't available, they'll still like stream it on TV. Like so, I mean, it's very big in just like most Hispanic cultures.
Exactly. That was my upbringing.
So what about growing up as far as career wise? Like what sort of aspirations did you have?
Honestly, I didn't have much aspirations. I just basically I was raised in a way where it was like, o sea, viniendo de los cultural norms dominicano, okay, your parents are here to give you a better life, but like it's like, oh, go to school, but go to school for what? Like it's just like I don't even know who I am. Like when you graduate high school at 18, it's like what am I gonna do for the rest of my life? Like I didn't know. At that age, I had music, so I just kind of like, I moved out at 18, and I was like...
At 18?
Yeah. I was like, vamos a aventurar, like, let's just, figure it out. And I was very conscious of the fact that, like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure it out on the hard way, because I'm not about to go to college and, like, I did go to college for a semester, but it just, like, it was like, what am I doing here? I didn't really get explained what career paths and opportunities there were. You just kind of have the example of like, oh, tiene que ir para la escuela, y tiene que ser, whatever. And it's just like, that never resonated with me, like.
Well, it was kind of like the guidance was just to go to school, but you're just like, y después qué?
Exactly.
Yeah, like once I get there, like, okay, take classes, but like for what?
Exactly.
And
so,
did you, like, once you were in school, maybe you looked around at the different paths and you were like, that's not really like attractive to me? I don't know. Like you saw different careers, you're like, engineer or business or this or that. Maybe you just weren't that excited about it?
Honestly, man, like I didn't even know that you could study music at that age.
That's what I was about to say, yeah.
Like I didn't know. I mean, yeah, I got to college and it was like, it was like the least attractive thing. It was like, okay, take a speech class, take a music history class, which was like so boring. Like, going back to like the 1500s, and it was just like, what is like, no, this is like, I don't get it. But I just had a gut feeling that it was just like, I still don't even know who I am. I still don't even know what's out there in the world, and I kind of wanted to get a more real life feeler of what was out there in the world. Like I feel like I consciously chose to take the harder path because it was truer to me, to myself.
Consciously wanted to take the harder path because it was true to yourself. Because
Yeah,
you gotta explain it to me. Like, is that because life felt like a hard path? You were just like, this is what feels comfortable? Like,
I knew that like the structure, like the school structure, the like working under a boss structure, like it doesn't work with me, you know. Like I need to flow. I need to be free, right? Like and that's kind of how I went about it, you know. Yeah, I worked plenty of odd jobs, but I was still like working in music, right? Like, so whatever it took to kind of keep the music afloat, because I knew I wanted to follow music. I didn't know necessarily what path to take for music.
yeah.
But I was just trying to figure out, how do I keep this afloat?
Yeah, but when did you get that idea in your head? Because at first, when I asked you about like career ambitions, you were like, I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do.
Right.
But then eventually, it sounds like you got to a point where you're just like, this is interesting.
Right.
Like, maybe I want to pursue this. Like, what? And you were doing a bunch of, you call it odd jobs, but you were doing a bunch of jobs and still doing that on the side. But when did you start doing that on the side?
So when I was like 17, I was in high school, but then I started playing with a band that like was every weekend, maybe 4 or 5 gigs a weekend. Sometimes they would start like
4 or 5 gigs a weekend?
Yeah, sometimes they would start Thursday, and then like they would end like Monday morning, and then, you know, like Sunday night into Monday morning, go straight to school type thing. So like,
Wait. But like these people in the band, like how old were they?
oh, they were a little bit older than me. I was the youngest one.
Oh, okay.
I was the youngest one.
I just thought it was a bunch of grown ass men and you. Like,
No,
17-year-old.
like, you know, they were, you know, mid-20s, and I was like 17.
How the hell do you find a band that you just want to like start? This is like pre-social media, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I mean, I was out there. You know, as a musician, is a network. As a musician, is a network. You know, like, so, you know, I started playing bass and stuff, and then like I found these musicians or whatever, and then you kind of just like show up and you make friends with people, and then it's like, oh, and then they recommend you and then whatever. So I kind of got an in. So then by the time I graduated high school, and like at 18, it was like, oh, well, we're making enough money to like, you know, whatever, get a roommate situation and like move out, because I grew up in Long Island. So at that point, the band was set in the city, in like Queens, Brooklyn, whatever. So I moved out to Queens, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just going to follow this intuition, you know? And then at that same time, like I was doing music, tried college, did some odd jobs. And then it was like, I still like, I don't get it yet, right? But at 21, by the time I turned 21, I was like, okay, I like music. Like, I like this. I'm going to study music. So
What was it that you liked about it?
I realized that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
But why? Like, was it about being on stage? Was it the immediate validation that you received from audiences? Like, did you just enjoy playing? Like, what was it about that?
It was the ability to express myself. I always found that like when I was learning my instrument, it was like a very spiritual time where I would lock myself in my room, and maybe from like certain clashes in my upbringing, like I was able to express what I wasn't able to express in words through music, right? Like, and in my instrument, and I would lock myself in my room for hours. Like after school, I remember I'd get home at 2:20, and like dinner will be ready, whatever. My mom not gonna, la cena, okay, las 7 de la noche, whatever, algo así. And I'd go back after dinner and play till like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock till my mom would tell me to shut up, basically. And then I would do my homework, right? So like, but yeah, like that experience of like really getting in touch with my emotional side through music and learning my instrument, I was like, I like how this feels. Like there's no better feeling than like being able to express yourself through your instrument.
Yeah. And tell me about, you mentioned like growing up you didn't feel comfortable potentially like expressing yourself. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just it was interesting, like, being raised in like a multicultural environment. It's just you always have that question of your identity, like like who are you? Like there was definitely a lot of code switching, like
At home?
o sea, en mi adolescencia,
Oh, okay.
cuando, like when you're trying to figure out like who you are, like okay, you go hang out with your cousins in the Bronx, and then you come back, you're talking, like a Bronx kid, and then it's like then I'm in Long Island, but I'm Dominican, but it's like there's not much of us out there, so it's like you hanging with your white friends, and then like, at the end of the day, like I just realized like I'm everything, like so.
But you said you weren't able to like express yourself though.
Right.
Like, is that because like, I don't know, certain expectations of like who you should have been as like a good church boy? I don't know. I'm just making up. I don't know.
No, it's just not that I wasn't able to express myself, maybe, but like it was more of a not being understood type of thing, and I think that's where I found the connection through music, where it was like, I could sort out my emotions through this, right? Like that's kind of like where I found, or how I found my passion through music.
Got you. And at this point, right, you saying you're like 21 and you're just like, yo, I think this is it for me. Like this is dope. Like, did anyone know you were like exploring this career path? Did anyone know you were playing music? Like,
Yeah, my whole family.
like you were vocal about it. Everybody knew.
Oh yeah. It was like, this is what I'm doing. Like I'm gonna figure it out the hard way. Like I don't care.
What did people say?
Oh, claro, muchísimo judgment. Este muchacho no sabemos qué es lo que está haciendo. Like I was definitely la oveja negra, como le dicen.
Black sheep.
The black sheep, the oddball out. But that's okay, because I followed my intuition, and I just really tried to stay true to myself. Like the last thing I wanted to do was be in a situation where I was like not true to myself. It just didn't feel right to exist like that for, we only have one life, so it's like.
But it must have hurt at the time though.
Yeah, of course.
Because these are people obviously you care about, you look up to.
Yeah.
And you obviously value their opinion. And oftentimes like we want to do things to impress our families, to make them proud and all these kind of things. So
right.
Like, was it difficult at that time to hear that but still continue?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was away from my family for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, definitely after high school, I was away for a while.
Why?
Just feeling like I was the oddball out, and not being as as traditional as they were. Like if you look at my family, like everybody else is just like on a straight path, which is good, right? Like that's maybe what worked for them, right? But for me, it was just like, this is not it. I gotta figure this out, whatever this is, whatever this feeling is of how I'm going to find a balance between my passion and making a career out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I listen to your story, it sounds like a straight path to me.
Oh no, it's
kind
of, a lot
right?
of zigzags.
But like I feel, but it's interesting that like you say that they had a straight path.
Yeah.
When I'm sure they had a bunch of zigzags too, right? Maybe. But like we often just, and maybe this is just me, but like we often just compare ourselves so much that we're just like, right. They had a smooth path. I have this like zigzag path where like as you're speaking it, like it sounds like there was this, yeah, like you had a lot of jobs just like we all do, right? But there was this common theme throughout. I don't know. It's interesting. Like we just always compare ourselves.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I don't really know in depth everybody's story, but like if you look at it from like, the outside in, it's like, okay, yeah, graduate high school, go to college, get a degree, work a corporate job. And it was just like, I knew for me that was not my path. One, because it just didn't resonate with me, and two, because I just didn't know the opportunities out there.
Right.
So, but yeah.
So at what point when you were 21, and you started thinking like, all right, I'm gonna like focus on this.
Right.
Right. Like, what are some of the steps you took after that?
Well, like the light bulb kind of like went off in my head where it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I was still in a place where I didn't know how to go about it. But what I did was I went to a conservatory for like 2 years, and I started taking private lessons and like learning music theory and learning how to like read music and stuff like that, and transcribe and all of that stuff. I've since lost those skills because I was in a world of musicians where like I wasn't able to apply that. A lot of the music that I played growing up was like by ear, and that's cool. But like when you're playing like with like, a Latin jazz band or a jazz band or a salsa band or a band that is reading music, like, you need to have your sheet music there, and you need to know how to read on site, right? But I was never able to apply that because the bands that I was playing with were, it was Dominican folklore at the end of the day. So like we're not reading music in Dominican folklore, but that's where I kind of started to gauge my interest in and my taste and my direction in music, rather than just like playing just to play.
So what do you mean? Like where did it go from there?
So from there, I mean, honestly, I just stayed playing in the same musician circuit, and I was never able to like go into the path that I wanted to go into, which was like Latin jazz, salsa. That's really like what I was studying like as a bass player to like. But like after 2 years, I don't know why. I guess I just didn't have guidance as a young person, and I just quit. I was like, all right, well, I was playing with bands that were like really busy at the time, and it was just like I couldn't keep up with the studies and then like playing with the bands, and it was tough to know how to transition from one thing to the next. Like I said, I feel like I just didn't have guidance at that time.
Yeah.
But it was still a time where I was like discovering what I actually liked about music.
And what was the part that you said you really started liking?
So I mean, like as far as genre wise, like I'm really a fan of like jazz and Latin jazz.
Also, it wasn't even just learning about like even from a genre's perspective, you started figuring out what you liked.
Right.
Because you for so long thought you had to play a certain type of music.
I guess
enjoy a certain type of music.
Yeah, like I kind of fell into like the circle of like Dominican musicians that just played merengue, típico, and bachata.
Yeah.
And like that's cool. That's my culture. I love it.
Yeah.
And I still to this day miss playing that. But like it was a time where I was trying to like discover who I was in music, right? Like because at the end of the day, I didn't grow up necessarily like in DR in the campo, like that, like those people, like that's their world. They kind of like stay there. I wanted to expand out of that because I think growing up in the US, like there were so many other musical influences, and it was like, okay, I want to play other types of music too. And I think at that age is where I kind of started discovering that.
But that's also tough because here you are you're learning about all these different genres, all these different skills, right? And then I'm just imagining you maybe like, yo, y'all, I got these ideas, like we should probably do this and that. But you're not just, but like you're one person of a bigger band.
Right.
So you also have to learn about like how is it even working with a team,
right?
Raising your suggestions and all of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And as someone who doesn't want to work in corporate, like this is a lot of corporate shit.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of politics involved, and like different dynamics on like who's the leader, and like cuidado si tú le dices a una gente esto va así, because there's people that get offended, and
like there were a lot of unspoken rules.
Yeah, I mean,
that were there.
You realize like the dynamic of like how the band worked. I always say like being in a band with like 7, 8 musicians is like having, 7, 8 girlfriends. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
listen, as a Dominican man, you probably know something about that. Hashtag Dominican men don't cheat. You know,
it's complicated. It's complicated. But those environments were tough. Like, after like discovering like my sound, like. And my interests, and trying to then like implement that in the bands that I was in at the time, like I saw that clash, right? Like, and it taught me a lot.
So how do you think you were received?
I mean, it depends who you're playing with, but like some of the bands, some of the ideas did, fall through. They did work out. But some of them were just like, I mean, like I was in plenty of bands where I got kicked out because I was just like problematic, right?
Really?
Like even in the ways that like people went about their business, and it's just, I just always tried to like push the limit of how we operate, what we can do, and what we can do, not only in the musical content, but like in the business operation aspects. Yo soy un freco a veces. And I know like I stepped over some lines that, I've learned to, not cross that like anymore, because it's like if si tú no tienes nada que ver con un grupo, like you're just like a hired person, like just, do your job. But I think that's what ultimately led me to like want to start doing my own music. Like, okay, like great. Like I started with my culture. I still do the music of my culture. I wanted to implement different, ways of working and different musical, sounds or whatever. It didn't work. I wasn't able to necessarily apply it in the ways that I wanted to in the bands that I was in. So then like ultimately it was like, I got to figure out how to do something for myself. Like, how am I going to do what I feel in my heart and what I hear in my head?
Now, was that scary?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, I'm probably still scared.
Yeah, bro. Listen, man.
Tell me about a little bit of the self-doubt that you probably had at that time around like, hey, I'm taking this risk, but it's something that I feel strongly about, something that I want to do, something that I want to try. You even said this earlier, kind of like, yo, life is short, I got to go for it. Like,
right.
But tell me about that thought process that you had.
Well, it started kind of like just making my own songs, right?
And that's a big difference too. Like, talk about self-expression.
Right.
You're going from
playing from someone else's
point of view, their song, right? And now, in some aspects, like, this is very personal.
Right.
Like, people probably listening to these songs like, oh, but okay, ¿de quién fue eso?
Right,
You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, no, I mean, it was, and at first, I was like, I have ideas in my head, like, I just want to get them out, like, I want to create what I feel in my heart, right? Like, my passion is to create, right? So
yo, y'all musicians be talking all poetic. Y'all be mad poetic, yo.
Ya tú sabes, y eso que no hablaban español. Ahí sí es verdad que yo me emociono.
Oh my God.
Pues sí.
Yeah. But no, it's a big change.
Yeah, it was a big change. And at first, like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I just dive head first into situations. It's like, I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. I know that I feel this right now in the moment. So I'm going to figure out how to create. I didn't know the first thing about plugging in a microphone. I didn't know the first thing about pressing record. Like, I didn't know anything, but I went off of that impulse, and like, I just spent hours and days and nights on learning how to, create, right? So at that point, it was still like, I don't know what this is, but like, I'm writing songs every night, and I'm recording them. I never in my mind did I think that I was gonna be an artist. I was like, oh, you do this, you sing this. Like, my idea was like, yeah, this could work for the band, right? Like, let's do this idea, right? Or this could work for another artist. Like, maybe I could write this idea but then I found out the hard way that I mean, I did end up writing for a couple of artists, but at the end of the day, like, not to sound selfish, it's like, you just don't want to deal with, like, it's hard to deal with like certain personalities and politics and all of that stuff. So yeah, sure, like, if anybody wants to take my songs, I'm here. I got a hard drive full of them. But like, I just realized it was like, you know what, I'm gonna create for me because that's what I enjoy doing.
But what was the story that you were telling yourself? Because you were probably trying to convince yourself that, like, maybe I'm not really like the face that should be in the front, right? That's why you started probably, handing it over to other people. But
right,
what were some of those limiting beliefs that you were telling yourself about, like, maybe I shouldn't do the solo thing, maybe I should just hand over my work to somebody?
I think it was just an issue of self-confidence, to be honest with you. Like, the idea of like having to be that person in front of the microphone on the stage with the spotlight, that shit freaked me out, dude. because I mean, I was in the background this whole time. I was yeah, cool, a stage, whatever, like 500 people, 1,000 people, whatever. I've played theaters, you know, Madison Square Garden, whatever. I'm in the background. There's a big difference. So that kind of like really informed, you know, what was going on in that situation with like, okay, yeah, great, I'm creating. So, you know, it's not gonna be for me. It's gonna be someone else can do it. Someone else can do it. And I like that you brought up limiting beliefs, because, you know, at the same time I'm believing in myself, because I'm going for this passion of creating, but at the same time I'm limiting myself, because I could have started like, you know, 10 years ago, you know, being this artist and just being okay with where I was in my creative process and releasing those songs that I started writing back then.
Yeah. But everything happens for a reason, man.
Yeah, everything happens. Everything happens for a reason. And then like I you know, with time, like you know, you go through your own personal growth journeys and stuff, and like I think that really like informed how I was gonna go about being this artist and representing what I represent in the music that I do.
Do you remember your first show?
First show.
Like were you like the sweat patches under those armpit? Like that shit was crazy.
There was a couple of them.
Like your first show where you doing your by yourself. Like what did that feel like?
Not good. It just,
Not good.
It's not like no, I wasn't ready.
Too soon.
No. There was just still
You
like
almost canceled it like minutes before.
dude, it was just,
No, that's real. You know people's all right, so people's biggest fear apparently is public speaking.
oh yeah.
But imagine singing.
No, for sure.
That is like another level.
Like I told you, like when I went into that first semester of college and I took a speech class, the public speaking class.
Yeah.
Dude, that's why I quit. That was like my number one fear, being that like that center person, that spotlight.
Wait, your number one fear was public speaking. Now you sing for a living?
Lo que te digo, o sea, me atormentaba esa idea, como que
That's
I was just
fascinating.
It was, but you know, you realize like you gotta do shit with fear, you know. And I think still at the point of like my first show, I didn't know all of that. I kind of fell into a situation. I can't talk too much about it, but like I had a project before my current project now, and you know, there was still like a lot of myself that I didn't know, and again, like I still wasn't on my path of like of my personal growth journey, right? And like I didn't have my feet really como que sembrado en la tierra con mi self-confidence, right? But it informed me for where I'm at now. I think maybe about a year ago, I started really like going out and performing live, and I could speak to that experience that like I was nervous, of course, you know, like, but I knew at that point it was like, okay, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be scared, but you're going to do it anyways, because if you don't do it the first time, the second time is not going to happen. If you don't do it the second time, the third time is not going to happen. And that's kind of like how I don't know. I guess that's my motto in life. Just like do it anyways, right? Like,
and it's only gonna get easier as you do.
Right. And you don't realize how much there is left to learn. Like, you know, yeah, great. I learned a whole bunch of songs. Great, I'm ready in my mind. I'm ready to sing. Okay, then you do the first show. It's like, wow, like I could learn a lot more about being an entertainer. Like, what else is there to learn? Like, and each show I've learned something else, right? So
and that goes back to I think you mentioned this earlier, but like you're more of a get my hands dirty kind of guy than like you rather do it than read about it. And I'm the same way.
Yeah, for sure. There are things that I do, you know, try to inform myself about, but I think what makes the difference is just doing it anyways, because there have been situations where it's like you're practicing things in theory, and it's just like, no, you need to do it in the real world. That's, o sea, la mejor escuela es coger calle.
Yeah.
Hey, hacerlo y ya. O sea, you could read all day, you could YouTube all day, you could documentary all day, but like you need to apply that. You need to apply that because that's where the real learning happens.
By the way, I'm stealing that. I'm stealing that. I'm putting that on a t-shirt. I'm telling you that right. I'm telling you that right now. I'm taking that for a t-shirt.
Ya lo sabe.
Wait, so I think another part that's really funny is that like you're writing your own things, you're writing your own songs, you're performing them. Does your family have any opinions about like the topics that you should write about?
You know,
or friends or anybody?
Yeah. I think my mom one time was like, "Oh, I like that song, but I don't like that one word in there." And it's just like, listen, Mom, at this age, I'm gonna be me.
My mom says the same thing about my Instagram stories. She's like, "Oh my God, I look so terrible with my hair. Like, you can't post that." I'm like, nobody cares, Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, for me, like the way I cope with that is like, and other friends do have opinions, sure. Music is my tool for expression, and I want to express where I'm at in my life right now, at this moment, through music, and like it comes in different waves. So what I may be talking about in 2020 is not the same thing that I'm going to talk about in 2025. And also maybe musically, sonically, like it might just be different, right? Because I'm just trying to express my experience in this life.
Yeah. Do you feel confident these days saying that you're a musician?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like if someone asks you, like you just met somebody, I don't even remember like when we met, like what if you said like you're a musician? I don't know.
But I may have. Yeah, I think so.
But you're confident talking about like, this is what I do.
Absolutely.
All that kind of, okay.
Absolutely, man. So at this point in my life, I've discovered, you know, my self-confidence, and I've been able to, I think the hardest thing is embracing that and stepping into that, right? And living that, right? Like that being of who you are. Like you have to define it, you have to put it down on paper. You have to step forward with that every day.
Yeah.
And I think that discovery has informed my musical journey, and as well as like my personal life.
Yeah.
Again, like I think authenticity is like you find yourself, get to wherever that place may be as fast as possible. The path may not be clear, but like find yourself, right? And be true to who you say you are.
Yeah.
You know, find that set of values that works for you.
How do you think you've been received online? Because this time around, being the front-facing person, not only are you, being seen on stage, but now people are finding out about you, like online.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. I mean, there's a lot of like cards stacked against you, and I think you could speak to this as well as an entrepreneur. You kind of have to make your own destiny at the end of the day. Nobody's going to come and save you. I think it's been slow, but like for me, it's more about aligning with specific people rather than trying to please the masses, right?
What do you mean?
O sea, like, I'm not, por ejemplo, en una entrevista que acabo de hacer, me preguntaron como que, oh, are you willing to do anything to make it? And it was just like, that's not the point. The point is I want to live now and express now. And like, I think through doing that, I'm going to attract the people that are, I don't know if I could curse, but
yeah, you curse.
That fuck with me. And that's the point. That's the point. And
that's who you're worried about. Like you're not worried about the quote unquote the masses.
Right. I'm not necessarily trying to please an expectation, right? Like in this industry. Like this is about being me.
Because hypothetically speaking, you could go into, I'm just making this up, right?
Right.
Country is really popping right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really popping right now, and you could, hypothetically speaking, make a country album, right? But maybe that's just not what you want to make.
Right. Like following trends and all of that stuff right now. Like it's just, so that's why I say it's like, it's hard to tell necessarily how I've been received, because it's like I'm not online trying to make the most catchy reel, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to be this clickbait, person. Like, but at the same time, I've been able to slowly but surely start to build a core audience that like messes with me. Clean it up there a little bit.
It's fine, man. It's fine.
For who I am, and that in and of itself becomes a sustainable, in my opinion, a sustainable way of going about this, because it's just like, yo, how can you sleep at night? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's like, I can't be this fake person. You know what I'm saying? So
like you feel more comfortable building things slowly over time versus putting out something that makes you uncomfortable, but knowing it will give you whatever views or whatever.
Right.
I like that, man.
That's where I'm at. That's where I've come to, for sure.
Was there a point that you didn't feel like that though, where you were just like, listen, I'm gonna do the masses right now, and eventually I'll focus on this other thing? Or you just always been like that?
Honestly, not really. There has been like situations where like I've realized like writing for other people took me out of my element. I think it's still a valuable skill, because you have to realize that this is not for you. But at the end of the day, like, I still want to be true to myself. So it's just like you have to learn how to separate those two things. Como te digo, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if si me di a entender ahí, pero there has been situations where like you just have to separate yourself, but then I've also like realized like now I'm not choosing that purposely, because at the end of the day, like, it's not gonna serve me.
Yeah.
It's not gonna serve me for what my mission is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, obviously you've come a long way, and it's really dope to see you embrace like this side of you. In particular, this idea of fucking with the people that fuck with you in this core audience and being patient with it. It's something that I actually spoke about on a podcast episode previously, because I was having a conversation with my boy, and he was like, we were having this argument, and he's along the lines of like, of course I want to be loved by the masses. Who doesn't? And I think we've all been trained in like this capitalistic society to always be, or to go after the quote unquote the masses, even if it means fake it till you make it kind of thing. And I was actually trying to argue the other side, trying to argue like to your point that, yeah, I don't know. I was just trying to argue your point. I don't even know where I was going with this.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think at the end of the day, like, you have to ask yourself the question of like, okay, how can I make whatever my endeavor is sustainable to me emotionally? Because I think especially right now, like, there's so many creators that like are trying to, and not necessarily music only, but like I said, there's so many cards stacked against us that if you're not in the algorithm, and if you don't look like this, if you don't clip the reel like this, if you don't do the cat, it's just like, yo, that shit is exhausting. Fuck all of that shit.
Yeah, like the music will speak for itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then also too, like, I think with what I do, like, it's I could apply my art in the physical realm, like, and I think when I first started releasing music, I had to discover all of this, like, how you're marketing yourself and all that stuff. Yeah. And then I was like, yo, but the best way to market yourself is to literally put yourself in front of people. Like, great. The internet and media, forms are supplements to what you do. But at the end of the day, like, we live a human experience. And I think that's where I'm at with all of that, man. Like, yeah, great. I don't get me wrong. Like, we've spoken. I have my social media strategy, but my social, I just can't. I found a way to do it in a sustainable way, emotionally, and like also like with time constraints, because this is like a full-time job, dude.
Yeah.
Sitting down, editing videos, like, it's just.
I mean, he knows about it.
Yeah. This guy knows about it.
Well, to close though, right?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
What's the one thing that continues to inspire you to continue being your most authentic self?
just living life and learning. I'm inspired by like learning every day and having new experiences. Having new experiences informs my creativity, and informs my thoughts and my perspective. But yeah.
Mi gente, that wraps up another episode of the Quién, Eres podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please do us a favor. Like, share, comment wherever you're listening to this episode. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave us a rating and review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you, and see you next time.